following podcast may contain some adult language. You've been warned.
Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen.
Welcome to Finding the Narrative, a Genesys RPG podcast. This is a show dedicated to the Genesys role-playing system from Fantasy Flight Games, a show in which we, your hosts, discuss all things Genesys from a player's and a GM's perspective. I am Tony Fanning, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Chris Holmes. How you doing, homie?
I'm doing great, my brother. Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting weekend with a crap ton of snow, heavy snow here in the cities. So I was able to do more wings, more food. And, by the way, everybody, Fireball whiskey does not make for a good chicken marinade. Pretty bland. It was a good idea, but it didn't quite pan out. It looked great, though. It looked great. I think I sent Tony a picture.
I saw this meme the other day that made me think of you and your Fireball fetish.
Okay.
Yeah, because it said, this one guy gets in his car and goes, "Man, your air freshener smells like Fireball." And everybody in the car looks at him and says, "It's cinnamon, you drunk."
I would totally say that to you. When you pick me up from Con to Cobb and you have a cinnamon scented air freshener, I'll be like, dude, you got an open Fireball in here somewhere. Anyways, so on to the news. We have Shadow the Beanstalk is on PDF. Everyone,
yay!
It came out on PDF this past week. It's still $24.95, so it's half price. For PDF, and I was just telling Tony, I wouldn't pay $50 for a PDF anyway.
Right.
Only if they printed the damn thing out, mailed it to me, and gave me the PDF would I spend $50 on Drive-Thru RPG for it. But no, $25 is good.
25 is pretty good for a PDF, especially one as high quality as this.
Yeah, I mean it's over 250 pages, so 10 cents a page doesn't suck.
Right? That's math. Math are hard.
Yeah, that's math, everybody. Sorry, we won't get into math. All right, so what's next on the agenda?
Listener feedback.
Yes.
We had one from our good friend on his vacation, nonetheless, Mr. Stefan Dragonspawn. He says, "What up, my brother nerds? I had tried to get my Android game started before the official book came out by using the fan-made Android document by Corlal, pound 3628, whatever.
That's a good document, by the way.
But RL got in the way.
That'd be real life for all you non-internet people.
Yeah. I still liked some of the elements of their document and decided to keep them, and I'll tell you why. And this is a good thing. You know, he mentioned here, he says, number one, I was rather disappointed at the lack of human templates, as the core rulebook just had the normal human and removed the laborer, intellectual, and aristocrat.
I'm assuming he's talking about Shadow the Beanstalk.
Correct.
For the core book. Right. Okay, gotcha.
But Corlal created 3 more for the basic 4, athletic, urchin, and pusher, which can give your character a different focus. Their abilities also help emphasize their types. So I kept all 7. Really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
See if I'll lop those in my Android games. And then the careers are nice, but I will also make ones from Corlal's, such as Charmer, Infiltrator, and Pilot available as well.
Ooh.
Actually, Charmer and Pilot are in the core rulebook. But any overlap, and I will use the ones from the official book, such as the Runner. And it says, I agree that there aren't enough Cybernetics G mods. Cyberpunk 2020 and Shadowrun had plenty of such things. I certainly hope that they come up with another source book just for gear, including cyber and genetic technology. Otherwise, I could use the appropriate Star Wars supplements. And that's one thing that I'm going to be doing is porting over a bunch of Star Wars stuff for my Android games, just to make the fill out the holes in the cyberware section.
We may have to put a. You should put a list of what those source books are that you might be grabbing stuff from up on our Mayway page. That way people, that'd be good. There's
may do that. Just about anything cyberware wise. There's a lot of things that like jump over back and forth.
Yeah.
Price wise, I'm finding that the Star Wars prices are about 5 times the price for Android.
That's what we saw the other day, didn't we?
Yeah, so if I'm going to use Star Wars stuff, I'm just going to divide the price by 5. Maybe if it's something black market, divide by 5 and add 100 or something like that,
Yeah.
But either way, and then the last part of his email, I believe that another source of inspiration for this genre would be the anime Bubblegum Crisis, which is also set in a high-tech future near future that deals with issues of humanity and boomers, which can be bioroids from Android. And the 4 heroines all don unique power armor to fight problems of rogue boomers in the city while keeping their identity a secret. Yes, one of these ladies' suit actually better at hacking computers than physical combat. So yeah, you could totally do Bubblegum Crisis in Android. Just need to build some power armor for your. And there is a lot of anime out there that is in the cyberpunk genre. Bubblegum Crisis, Evangelion. There's others that I'm drawing a blank on. Ghost in the Shell, obviously, Akira. Those are the classics. There's a lot of cyberpunk themes in anime. Tank Police, Dominion. There's another one.
Alita, Battle Angel.
Alita, Battle Angel. All of them, yes. Last part of his email was just to me. It says another great show. Another great show despite Chris's additional sound effects.
What?
I think you were a little burpy last episode.
Was I? Apologize for that, everybody. No, I'm not. I don't apologize.
And it was nice to hear Jim's point of view and input as well. Bring back Cherry Blow Pop. I plan on
it. Such a great name. That's awesome.
I plan on it. It's probably going to be one of my most reoccurring characters in our Advantageous Threats segment. So.
Yeah. Yep.
So thank you, Stefan. Appreciate the email. We did miss a ton of sources for cyberpunk literature and TV shows and whatnot. But again, if you just use Wikipedia, type in cyberpunk literature, you will find a plethora of stuff.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
Right? For you, all you guys out there. Jamie.
Yeah. Those are big words.
Yeah, we'll continue to use all big words. Multiple syllables.
All right, shall we get on to the next section?
Oh yeah, let's do that, bud.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 50 Pieces of Awesome. This is where Chris goes out on the internet and he finds us something to talk about that is amazeballs. What do you got this week, bud?
Well, actually, I kind of want to... I'm going to call a slight audible here because what I'm going to tell you all about tonight is probably worth about 150 pieces of awesome because it is Drainsmith's dispensary of everything you need.
Ooh, shiny.
But Drainsmith, it doesn't have everything we need. I didn't see the woman in a red dress out here. Anyways, no. Oh, I'm telling you, dude. We actually mentioned Drainsmith back on episode 15, a couple of character sheets that he created. He's got those here. Everything else he's put together. We're talking some graphics, InDesign templates and source files. Now, I've never used InDesign, but I believe it's kind of almost on the lines of like that GM Binder, where you can create, your layouts of, documents and whatever. So he's got his templates in there, probably some of the cards. Speaking of which, he created network encounter cards for for Shadows of the Beanstalk, and these are pretty damn cool. So he's got like cards for like your icebreakers, your different barriers that you can have, your different programs. Pretty sweet stuff. The spell sheets are pretty cool because he's got on the bottom of each spell sheet, he's got a place for spells known. Now, I'm guessing that's a place where you can kind of write down your most common spells, build them up, and whatever. So that's cool. He did a Lost Mines of Phandelver D&D 5e starter set adventure, which, by the way, one of the better adventures I've actually run and I've actually played in a long time in D&D, that he converted to Genesys for us. So that's cool. Also, he's got a Something Strange, which is called Something Strange, and it's a modern horror setting. So that's awesome. And then something that I think is kind of a work in progress called the Soul System 2088. But what he's got in there for the Martian archetype, dude, is pretty sweet. Let me pull it up real quick. I was gonna have it up, but I forgot. Okay. I think for the Martian, what the heck was that? I can't remember, but it was pretty cool. So the Martian archetype, that would be something I would probably pull in and use for my Expanse enhancement. I would use the Looney for creating a belter and give this low G Adept and low G Master talents to them for free. So a low G Adept means if you're in 0G, it's not difficult terrain. It's not considered difficult terrain. And low G Master talents, basically you could do coordination and athletics checks. If you're in 0G, you get a boost die. That feels very belterish to me, man.
Very nice.
Anyways, so this is just a plethora of awesomeness. So that's why I kind of want to give away 150 pieces, because this is a lot of stuff. And we could go into each one of these for things, like Something Strange could be its own 50 piece of awesome, because it's really good. Really good.
See, you're just going about this all wrong. You should have just mined him a little bit at a time for 50 pieces of awesome here and there out of it, and then at the end of it all, you just tell them all about where you found it all.
No, Chris, I'll just give him.
You could have spread this out over multiple shows, buddy. You just totally.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. I've got these. I've got all these. I've got this big bag of awesomeness that I'll throw his way.
Dude, this is a lot of cool stuff in here. I have just personally sitting here while I was listening to you talk, downloaded like 8 of the items on there. It's so good.
Yeah, he's got a couple of GM screens, combat summary, equipment encyclopedia, adversaries anthology, a talent tome, which he's put all the talents into one thing. Created a player's guide, which is for Shadow of the Beanstalk, which is kind of cool. That'd be something you could ship to your players and say, hey, here's what's available,
Very nice.
I don't know, pretty cool. Pretty neat stuff. Well done. All
right. Drainsmith, you got more. Now your grand total, 200 pieces of awesome, 50 from before, 150 from today.
That was actually before we mentioned. That was actually before we did 50 pieces of awesome.
Oh, all right. Well,
I only have 150 to give away. Sorry.
Still, that makes him the richest pieces of awesome holding person out there, because Chris and I don't even have that much to give away anymore.
No, I'll spend, man. Dude, I probably should have milked this for all thinking that I could. But dude, I could have got 5 shows out of this.
was good stuff, man. I loved it. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
All right. So, Drainsmith, we give you 150 pieces of awesome.
All right, everybody. Open up your books of Genesis. Because tonight's we are talking Primordial Machina Talents. That's the name of our episode, which we always wait till like now to tell everybody what the name of the episode is. But that's okay, because we're going to get into the depths of it. And I think what we want to do is get everybody kind of level set again and kind of refresh some talent creation. So if you open up your core book to page 194 in the Dead Tree version, or 195 in your PDF. Right, Tony?
Damn right.
We can kind of go over, maybe hit on some of these, kind of one of the things on how to create a talent here. So, at its core, a talent is really something, it's a way for the character to kind of break the rules that are, the basic rules that are already written out there, you know? Mm-hmm. By removing setback dice, by adding boost dice, being able to use a certain knowledge skill for your spells instead of, another knowledge skill.
Converting strain to successes.
Converting strain to successes. Being able to be so dedicated that you get to increase, a characteristic by one right up at, tier 5. And that's what, talents come in various tiers. We have 5 tiers of them, tier 1 through 5. So when we're thinking of creating a talent, Tony, what are some of the questions we want to ask ourselves? What do you think?
Well, first you should have an idea about what your talent is. Is it going to be a defensive talent, an offensive talent? Is it going to affect certain skills? Does it make performing a task easier? Is it a debuff talent that makes your opponent's tasks harder? So on and so forth. Once you have a general idea in your mind, ask yourself the following questions. The first question is, does it have a mechanical effect or a narrative one? In the example, what is a talent listed on page 194? They list knack for it. That has a mechanical effect. It allows you to remove setback dice. Whereas how convenient, on the other hand, is a narrative effect, because it changes the ongoing story but doesn't interact directly with the game mechanics. So that's a talent on page 80, and it allows you to make a check to have an item spontaneously break without your character having taken any physical actions to break it. So that just affects the narrative. So, yeah, that's the 2 different types of talents: a narrative one or a mechanical. Next question.
Well, the next question is, you want to ask yourself, what characters does the talent affect? Does it affect your character? Does it affect their allies, the target allies, or does it target like your enemies, right? So those are some of the things you want to. That's kind of what you want to ask yourself there.
Not only that, but you also want to know who can take it when you're asking this question. Who should be the people taking it?
Your allies, you, or your enemies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else do we ask ourselves?
Next question. Do you use this talent during a specific type of encounter? Is it a social encounter talent? Is it an investigative encounter talent? Is it a combat encounter talent? Those are important questions to ask yourself. Is it every encounter? If it's every encounter, then it ought to be a little harder to get.
That's true. Very true.
And then?
But then you want to ask yourself, is this talent active or passive? Now, that's meaning, do you have to activate it with an incidental or a maneuver or an action? Or is it always on? Like, for instance, grit. Mm-hmm. You get a +1 or +2 to your strain for every rank you have in it, and that's basically always on, right? Whereas activating, I think, let me think, like quick draw. No, that's not it. No, I think that's an incidental. That's an incidental or something, right? You take an incidental to activate it. Yep. Inspiring rhetoric, I think that's an action. Yep. That you have to use, So, and then some cost. Well, actually, I think it might ask what do they cost as well. So, so there's a difference there. And then beyond if the talent is active, what else do we want to ask ourselves with that? If it is active.
Well, if it is active, how long does it take to use? Mm-hmm. Is it something that's incidental? Is it a maneuver? Is it reducing the time something takes? For instance, like quick draw. Mm-hmm. Quick draw is normally, drawing a weapon is normally a maneuver. However, quick draw changes it to an incidental.
Good way of explaining that one, yep.
Yep, and then, does it take an action? Does it require a die roll? That's your big differentiator between a maneuver and an action. Maneuvers and actions usually take the same amount of time in an encounter. However, actions require a die roll.
Yep. Yeah, you could think of it this way. If you're doing something that doesn't require a roll, it's a maneuver. Mm-hmm. Right? That's pretty much it.
And if it's something that is equal to speaking a few words or dropping a weapon, it's an incidental.
Yeah. That take no time.
Yep. All right, so what's next?
The next thing that you have to ask ourselves is if it is an active talent, what does it cost to use beyond a maneuver or an action? It could cost a story point. I believe there are a few of them out there that you need to spend a story point on. For instance, can't remember the name of it, but there is one where you can link a characteristic to a combat skill and add that characteristic ranks in that characteristic. So if you have a 3 in agility, if you spend a story point, if you hit somebody, you can add 3 to your damage. Now, if you've used a story point when you made that combat check, you couldn't use a story point to activate this talent in the same role. So that's a limiting factor on this talent by using story points. Strain is another one. Does it inflict strain on your character to use them? I think, what is it? Is Bodyguard one? Oh, Parry. There you go. Parry is one where you can spend some strain to convert wounds to strain, basically. That's what you're doing.
Gotcha.
And then the other cost is the time, which would be actions or maneuvers that you would take.
Just so you know, it was Lucky Strike was the talent you were thinking of there that takes a story point.
That's right. Yep. So you wouldn't be able to use this Lucky Strike talent and be able to upgrade your check to hit, say. So that's kind of balancing. And Lucky Strike is a pretty good talent. You're adding a lot of damage. So you want to limit it in that sense. Not only by maybe the tier that you decide that it's on, but this is a way to limit that as well. Mm-hmm. And there's another way to limit it too. What's next?
How often should the talent be used during a session? Mm-hmm. Now, there's once per round on the character's turn. So this is exactly what it sounds like. The character can use the talent once per game round on their turn only. Mm-hmm. They can't do it on someone else's turn. Once per round is a slightly looser variant on the previous limiter, and the character can only use the talent once per round, but they can use it during anyone's turn, not just their own. So it can take an out of turn incidental to do. Yep. And then there's once per encounter. That's your ones that you want to. You don't want them because it's so good. They would go to it for every move in that encounter.
Yeah.
That's where I don't want you using this more than once per encounter. And then the last one is once per session.
Yeah.
Figure you're going to have an average of 3 to 5 encounters per session. Do you want your players being able to use it in every one of them? If not, once per session is a great limiter.
Yep. And I think the once per session one, those are kind of reserved for your rerolls. Like once per session, you can reroll a combat check or a survival check or something.
A lot of your higher ranking talents, the ones that really break the game rules, are once per session rules.
Yeah.
Once per session talents. So.
Yep. Some of them are pretty nifty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then there is one last question. It is the important question because it's the one that most people get wrong. Everybody debates on. I look at other talents written by other people and I go, I think you got that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And what Tony's talking about is what tier do you put the talents in? Now, I'm starting on page 196. Well, 195, they kind of give a start to the blurb, but really they get into the meat of it on 196. What you would put in a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 talents. So basically your tier 1 talents are very simple with very small effects like toughened, grit, I think quick draw, those talents are tier 1, Yep. They basically they're not too remarkable. If the talents allow you to remove one setback die or add one boost die to a check, those are about the right level for tier 1 talents. So
also adding a career skill.
Yeah, there you go.
That's not a magic skill.
Right, that's not a magic skill. You want to save that for like tier 2 probably, right?
Right.
We're thinking, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so Tony, what do we put in tier 2?
Tier 2 is where you start to get the defensive talents, such as those that let characters perform maneuvers or actions that protect them from melee or ranged attacks. Mm-hmm. Additionally, include talents that give characters more combat options, allowing them to do different things, wielding 2 weapons, and so on and so forth. Also, Tier 2 includes talents that allow characters to provide minor but useful bonuses to their allies. So when you start affecting your allies' die rolls with boost dice, or removing setback, or giving them automatic advantage, this is the purvey of Tier 2.
Right.
Overall, Tier 2 is a good place to add in ranked talents that are useful enough that you want a lot of characters to take them, but you don't want them to be auto-includes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Tier 3.
Well, before we go into that, you mentioned ranked talents. And we haven't mentioned what a ranked talent is, actually. In this part, and it's a good segue to kind of talk about them. Now, your ranked talents are talents you could take more than once, but you have to take the next rank a tier above the one you've started at. So, say grit is a tier 1 talent. So, rank 1, you'll get +1 to your strain threshold, and then at tier 2, you could take it again and add another strain to your threshold, and so on, and etc. But what Tony mentioned, these defensive talents like parry and what was the other one? Reflect, dodge or something. Yeah, dodge. Those start at tier 2 because you don't necessarily want too many ranks to be added, or you want them to start a little higher up, right?
Right. Well, you want those ranks to be expensive. The higher the tier, the talent, the more expensive those ranks. To get 5 ranks in something that starts at tier 3, you have to take it tier 3, tier 4, and then 3 more times at tier 5.
Yeah, which is 25 XP each. Yeah, that's a lot. And yeah. Oh, and by the way, that's what your talents do cost. Is 5 XP times the tier they're in. And you have to have one more talent at a tier before you could take a tier at a new level. So you need at least 2 tier 1 talents to take a tier 2 talent. You need at least 2 tier 2 talents, 3 tier 1 talents before you could take a tier 3 talent. And that goes, and then so on and so forth. And speaking of tier 3 talents, these are the talents that start to kind of change the way the game is played a bit. Mm-hmm. They're more versatile for defense and offense. They'll be upgrading or downgrading difficulties of combat checks. You'll be adding more damage to the check. So I think that Lucky Strike talent is a tier 3 talent.
No, it's tier 2.
It is tier 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it costs a story point.
But it does cost a story point. So yeah, so there you go. So that's a perfect example here. Though they say here's the the ability to add more damage for tier 3, but you're limiting it with the story point, which would put it maybe in a tier 2. So this is more of a art than a science, if you will.
It is. A lot of their talents in the core rulebook, in the Terranoth book, in the Shadow of the Beanstalk book, all break their rules.
Yeah. Yeah, these basic rules here, a little bit.
But that's because they can, and they've play tested these rules. They know they have all these people out there play testing them. Mm-hmm. They know where they want to put them, and it's their science, their art. So
exactly.
just like the artists break their own rules all the time. They're
that's what they're doing. Same
here.
Yeah. And then another one is the animal companion, where you get a permanent pet. That's a tier 3 talent. Again, I mean, don't be afraid to create new talents and put them where you think they should go, and just roll with it. Don't be afraid to do that. These are just guidelines.
Most assuredly. So then we get into tier 4. Tier 4 should be the home of your best talents. Some of your best talents. Arguably, these talents are the game-breaking ones. Allowing you to change your critical, choose the critical you take. Another thing you can do in tier 4 talents is allow you to do things that would require an action as a maneuver instead. That means you could potentially do it 3 times in a turn, which is pretty badass. So, yeah, likewise, a buff that lets allies perform extra actions belongs here as well. Because this slows down gameplay, any talent that lets characters roll multiple pools of dice in a single turn should be a tier 4 or better talent. Tier 4 should also be the home for ranked talents that you don't want players purchasing very many ranks of. Again, same thing.
Yeah.
So then, last tier?
Last tier would be tier 5. Now, these are talents that are slightly better than tier 4, but they are also those talents that really won't be taken too many times. Like, for instance, permanently improving, dedication, permanently improving one of your character's characteristics. Being able to decrease the difficulty. Now, this is decrease the difficulty. Now, that means taking a difficulty die away. So making that hard check an average check, or that average check a simple check.
Big step. Yeah.
Big steps. And I think there's one in Terranoth, which is one of your favorites, Tony, which is basically I could cast the spell all frickin' day, called Zealous Fire. When the Game Master spends a story point, your character heals 2 strain. Mm-hmm. Every mage should have this talent, because it's a free spell for me, man.
It almost really sounds like you're quoting me. It's wonderful, I believe.
Isn't it, though? Yeah. I might as well be.
All right, so, this is a great segue into creating our own talents. Now, we have created some for our setting, and this is just a small amount of them. Some of them we've created, and then there's others we've done a little bit of reskinning.
Yes.
Now, that's one thing that I want to talk about before we go into the ones we created. There are resources out there you can reskin from. Not just for our setting. Again, it's a post-apocalyptic steampunk world. Where the elements play a big part, the 4 elements. So we're drawing from fantasy. We're drawing from technological settings like Shadow of the Beanstalk, Star Wars. We're drawing from all these sources to get our inspiration for our talents. So when you're doing this and you're building your talents, look out there. If you don't have the Star Wars books, there are people that can tell you what talents are available. And there's resources on the internet where you can read the talents. There's people who've made talent lists. There's people who've made talent printable talent trees of all of the Star Wars careers.
Mm-hmm. There's also the one, the what is it? The expanded talent list that a group of folks on the Genesys forums have put together.
And they've ported over a ton of Star Wars talents.
Star Wars talents and made them appropriate for Genesys.
But if you're doing a setting that uses any kind of technology, look at what's in Shadow of the Beanstalk. If you're doing a setting that uses any kind of magic, look in Realms of Terranoth.
Absolutely.
Pull things over that fit.
Right. And then if you don't find anything, if you have a concept like Tony and I, we're going to get into here, that just isn't out there, create your own. And we've kind of pulled these, we've kind of used a framework of the, a base talent, then an improved version, and a superior version of them, starting them at different tiers. So do we want to get into those that we've created, the 3 here that we've created?
Sure, because they're kind of important for our setting.
Yeah, they are.
Let's do it. Start with the first one, buddy.
Okay, so the first one is, we're calling this Elemental Resistance. We have a prerequisite for it, that you have to be an amalgam of the element that you're selected. So say my fire amalgam, I will take Elemental Resistance Fire. And it's a tier 1 passive talent, which means it's always on. And the mechanical benefit is I add 4 soak versus the element selected. So I'd have 4 soak versus fire for the base elemental resistance. And it makes sense. It gives a bit of flavor. My amalgam should be able to walk through the campfire or walk on the hot coals when dared and not hurt himself, right?
And that's why we made this a tier 1 talent, because we would like all amalgams to be able to take it and it'd be a building block for them.
Yep. What's the next one?
So then we decided to go with Elemental Resistance Improved. Now, again, you choose an element. It has to be, the prerequisites are, you have to be an amalgam of the element selected, and you have to have elemental resistance of the same type. So here you are. You're just building on it. So let's use the example of your fire amalgam. He's taken elemental fire resistance. Now at tier 3, he can take this passive. He meets the prerequisites. It's elemental resistance improved fire, and it gives him plus 8 soak versus the element selected.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now he's able to take direct fire attacks and walk through fireballs.
Basically, yeah.
And shrug off the damage. You might take 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4, but he's not going to fall.
Yeah.
So then we have our 3rd level of this.
Yeah, and this is the apex of your resistance as an amalgam, called Superior Elemental Resistance. And again, you have to be the amalgam of the element selected. You have to have elemental resistance. You have to have elemental resistance, the improved version of elemental resistance. It's a tier 4 talent. So at this point, your character has already invested, this would be 40 experience points just for these resistances. Not to mention all the other talents you need to actually be able to create a tier 4 talent, right? So you would need at least, another 15, 25, probably 65 more experience points to even almost 100 experience points before even grabbing this tier 4 talent. So your character's
not a beginner character.
Not a beginner character. That's basically what I'm getting into, what I'm talking about. And you get immunity versus the element you've selected. And it makes sense. Fire, you're the apex of a fire elemental, say. My guy should be immune to fire.
And that's exactly why we made it tier 4 instead of tier 5.
Yep.
Because it changes. The others just increase the soak. You have 4 soak plus 8 soak. This one, it overwrites all the XP you spent on those other talents to give you complete immunity.
Yes.
So instead of making it tier 5, that's why we made it tier 4. Just so you know, folks.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So those were our the ones we've created.
Right.
From scratch. For Primordial Machina.
Right.
Now, what ones are we thinking of reskinning, do you think?
Well, we're not necessarily reskinning, but we certainly want magic to be a big part of our setting. So we're going to have signature spell, improved signature spell, and other magical talents from Terranoth. Definitely going to bring those over. Those and most of what we find in the Genesys expanded talents list created by the folks on the Genesys forum was what I went by for my playtest. I just said, here's the document, use this. If it doesn't explicitly match up with skills in our system or with the characters in our system, we'll rewrite it.
Yeah.
Tweak it.
Right.
So in the case of, one of the examples would be one that required, it was for both mechanics and computers skills, and we don't have a computer skills in Primordial Machina, but we do have the artifice skill. So giving it some thought, maybe because artifice is a magic skill, maybe bumping it up a tier from what they had it at, and then on top of that, letting it affect artifice and mechanics.
Yeah.
Made it fit for our system. So for our game. So then I was looking at particularly the Shapeshifter and Shapeshifter approved talents.
That's a cool concept you have for this. I like this.
And to me, the amalgams, again, when I thought of amalgams, I think they're living elemental, but they're humanoid. They're humanoid. They have skin. They just have elemental features. For your fire elemental, they have wispy, fiery hair. For your water amalgam, they have maybe seashells as part of their skin, or maybe fish scales or things like that.
The air amalgam always has a breeze flowing through their hair. I mean, come on.
Always. Yeah. Your hair amalgam is your supermodel.
Yeah, your hair is always perfect. You flip it and it's
And your earth amalgams, they have dark and stony looking skin.
Yep.
But they're humanoid. They look, and I used my inspiration, which is the Genasi from D&D.
Yeah.
But I liked the idea of Shapeshifter and Improved Shapeshifter being, in this setting, only available to amalgams. So that was the skinning we did. We made it only available to amalgams, and it allows them to change into an elemental of their type.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And so the stat that increases, normally with shapeshifting, you increase agility and brawn by 1. And then you would reduce your, I think it's willpower by 1 and presence.
Yeah.
In this case, the amalgam will increase only the stat that they are.
That it's linked to it.
That they are linked to, yes. So
we'll have to lay those out.
So fire amalgam will go up in presence. The earth amalgam will go up in brawn. The water amalgam will go up in agility, and your air amalgam will go up in cunning.
Yep.
And then, so instead of getting 2 benefits and 2 negatives, they only just get the 1 benefit. But that's the reskinning of that for our amalgams for Primordial Machina.
Yeah, and your amalgam doesn't have to take it. It's just another option out there, that's what these are kind of all about, right?
Right. Okay, so then we have.
Next, what we have is a group of talents that we need because we have clockworks, which, i.e., think of droids from Star Wars. Basically, in our clockwork kind of setting, steampunky, clockworky setting, and we have mechs as well, powered kind of like steampunky powered armor, if you will. We picked a handful of talents that go in here for that. So something like reroute systems, a tier 4 high level talent, which allows you to increase a characteristic, yet decrease a characteristic, kind of reprogram yourself. And I think, Tony, we were thinking of only allowing the clockwork to have this talent, be able to change their own. Now, if they only have it, could they change it on another clockwork?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
But it would be Clockwork will only have that kind of intricate knowledge of how they work.
Yeah. Yep.
So, it just allows them to make an average mechanics check to reduce one of their characteristics by 1 and increase another of the characteristics by 1.
Nice.
That's the wording. Okay, and then we had like a couple others that we brought over, like Machine Mender. Machine Mender is when making a mechanics check to help a character heal wounds, the target heals an additional wound per rank of Machine Mender. Now, the only time you heal wounds with a mechanics check is for Clockwork.
Yep.
So that's basically the surgeon talent for Clockwork.
For medicine, yeah.
Yep, for medicine. But it's a tier 1 here because it's only limited to one race.
Yep.
And
it's a ranked talent, so you can get multiple levels of it. So, man, you got 4 ranks in this thing. Whenever you successfully heal a wound, you're going to add 4 to that. So that's kind of cool.
Yep.
That's a pretty good one. What else do we have?
Next, we brought over hidden storage. Hidden storage is you gain a hidden storage in vehicles, equipment, and items that hold an encumbrance equal to your ranks in hidden storage. Now, this one is not going to be Clockwork only, but this fits really well in like Machina or in a Clockwork. A Clockwork could have a hidden space in his body.
Yeah.
we went ahead because we have living characters with it and machines, large machines that can hold stuff. We went ahead and made it tier 2.
Yeah.
Tier 2 starting, and it's ranked. And so it gains a total encumbrance equal to the ranks in hidden storage. So if you took it at tier 1, then 2, 3, 4 encumbrance, you're getting up there with some pretty easy stuff. I mean, hard stuff to hide.
Yeah.
So, and then what's next?
The next one we have Eye for Detail. Now this is a tier 3 talent, which it's ranked as well. Mm-hmm. But after making a mechanics or computers check, but in our case, a mechanics check, may suffer strain up to the ranks in Eye for Detail to convert that many successes into advantage.
Nice.
So that's when you're creating stuff. You can generate more advantage to get those free, boosts to whatever you're creating, when you're making crafting. Yeah.
When you're making items, yes, when you're crafting. And we haven't really covered crafting yet. It's coming down the road, folks.
Yeah.
But when you're making, you really want to generate advantage. And this talent is a must if you're a crafter.
It is, yep.
And if you're doing a system where you're going to allow a lot of crafting, you may want to look into putting a version of this talent in. So.
Yeah.
The last one we have for our Clockwork and Machina is redundant systems. It's a tier 1, but it's highly limited. It's once per session. Take a redundant systems action. Make an easy mechanics check. That's 1 purple difficulty to harvest components from a functional device to repair a broken one without breaking the first device. So, when somebody breaks something of yours, you can just grab a part from somewhere, slap it into the other, and they both work.
Yeah. This is like the epitome of kit bashing. Like tinkerer. If you're a tinkerer, man, you need this. You basically this is it. This gives so much flavor. It's so flavorful.
I picture like J13, Dale's character, reaching down inside of his chest cavity, pulling out an extra gear, handing it to someone. Here, this'll fix it.
That's right. Your Machina. Yeah, put this motivator in your Machina. Damn it. Make it work. That's great.
So those are some of the ones we've done so far.
Cool. So that's what we've done for Primordial Machina.
Thus far, we're still writing more. We're still doing the play test. Probably only have a couple more sessions on that, but
sweet.
I asked my players last session to give us some feedback, maybe come up with some talents for us. So who knows, they may have some really good ones for us next time. Talents that fit their characters, ones that I can say, hey, yeah, that's cool, or no way, that's too powerful, go away. And then in this, I also wanted, I kind of called an audible in advance. I kind of wanted to discuss other talents that Chris and I were working on for other things. Yeah. And one of the things I've talked about myself is supersetting. Eventually, I'm going to do one. Eventually, I'm going to try, or maybe I'm just going to port over somebody else's work and finish it. I don't know. But either way, one of the things that makes supers cool is custom talents. That a talent that only that character can take. And working with your players to build a custom talents for their superpowers. And I made one for my character for the later for Advantageous Threats.
Oh, sweet.
And I will go over it then, but I just wanted to kind of cover, when you're making a custom talent for a specific character, tier is a little less important what tier you're making it, because they're going to take it. No matter what tier you're putting it at, they're going to take it. Always just kind of look at as far as the availability of it, tier doesn't matter is what I mean. The power of it. In this case, the one I'm talking about, what it allows them to do is change an action into a maneuver that they perform as if they had done the action with a simple success. That's a major rule breaker. So that's got to be either a tier 4 or a tier 5 talent. Since they can only do it once per encounter, it's now a tier 4. So there you go. So, and I'll talk about it later when I talk about Advantageous Threats. Cool. But what have you done so far, Chris?
Well, I was thinking of, in Primeval Thule, which actually I haven't touched that in months, in a while. So it got me thinking about the setting. So what I started doing when I was thinking of talents, I'm like, okay, what's special in this setting? What do I want? What kind of feel or theme do I want these talents to have? Well, the first thing that hit me was it's a gritty system where magic is scary. And there's some freaky fear, madness, Cthulhu-esque kind of things in there. So immediately I thought of the talents, your fear and madness rules, and those associated talents for your adversaries, or even and then maybe creating some for the player characters to get as well, to help with fear and madness and those kinds of things. Since that could be a theme in the Primeval Thule.
Okay.
The other thing that I was thinking of was gimping magic. Now, what do I mean by gimping? And I know Jamie out there is going, what are you doing? Why do you want to change magic? Now, I'm thinking it might cost more strain to cast. Maybe 3 to cast a spell. I don't know. Easier to botch, a spell. Making those, you might be upgrading checks. A lot of red dice when you're casting spells in this system, right? So, and going mad. Yeah.
What if, and this is my, I know people are going to hate me for this idea, but what if you take those magic charts and instead of adding difficulty dice, each one of those adds an upgrade?
Doesn't suck, Tony. That doesn't suck.
So the more you upgrade your power,
the harder it is.
The harder it is.
I'm going to make a note of that. Easier to botch.
I thought of that. I'm like, what if those were all red dice you were at instead of purple ones?
Increase difficulty.
So yeah,
magic charts. Yeah, I like that.
If you were just making a base bolt attack, let's just call that, and you wanted to add fire to it, in order to do that, you would have to upgrade your check. So instead of it being one purple, it's now one red. Because what you really are encouraging only really in Magic in the setting is you want that despair to cause madness.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You get me, Tony. You get it?
Yeah.
And something like that obviously would have to be play tested. When I get off my ass and get some kind of play testing mini campaign together for that. But anyways, so that's kind of what I was thinking. So as I was thinking, like I said, as I was thinking of the setting, thinking of the themes, what I want these new talents to do to kind of stand out. And of course, because it is a Magic setting, I'll basically be saying, Realms of Tiernoth, pulling a bunch of things there, from that. So yeah. So that's what I have for Primeval Duel.
Dude, sounds like you've had a couple of nice ideas to go into, maybe retool and, I don't know, maybe run something.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Do we want to... that's the meat of the show. The meat has been eaten. The meat has been done.
Let's move on to dessert.
Let's.
All right, welcome to Setting the Tone, folks. This is where Chris and I go into one of the books of Genesis and find some fluff and kind of read about it, maybe just talk about it. And we want to start with this awesome Shadow of the Beanstalk book that we just got.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There is this huge chapter of fluffy dessert back in the back of the book. Starts in chapter 4, and so we're going to start at the beginning of that.
Yum.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I might just say, this picture on this page with the androids does not equal humans and the big sledgehammer in the dude's hand and no jobs for clones, the camera drone. This is one of the biggest. Just looking at this picture tells you a lot of this is one of the biggest conflicts in this setting. Is
right. We're talking page 141 of Shadow of the Beanstalk, folks.
Right. And it's clones taking over jobs and androids taking over jobs for the humans, and that's one of the biggest conflicts in the setting that you can pull on as a GM.
Yep. So it goes in, and this is a chapter, just an overview of New Angeles and Heinlein. Why is Heinlein included? What is Heinlein? Well, folks, Heinlein is a city on the moon that is considered the 11th district of New Angeles. It is governed by New Angeles.
Yep.
In absentia, basically, from Earth. Mm-hmm. And it's... So it's included in this chapter. Now, New Angeles is the reason why we have the Shadow of the Beanstalk. It is the city built in Ecuador, built around the Cayambe volcano, where the beanstalk or the space elevator was built on the base of that volcano. We've talked about that in a previous show.
Yep.
Reading it in Worlds of Android.
Yeah.
So. But the city is enormous and diverse as New Angeles. This is a comprehensive guide is impossible. Yeah. However, what they do in this section is they give you just enough to wet your whistle as a GM and get those creative juices flowing. Yes. And then let you fill in the rest, which is perfect.
Yeah.
So the only other setting I can think of that did that just as well is the original Forgotten Realms material, where they would just write a little bit of history about an area, and then that's it. That's all they gave.
Let you go, right. And this sentence here on page 141, first sentence, second column, the purpose of this chapter is to enrich, not restrict, adventure building. I mean, not restrict. That says it all, right? I mean, if you want to, then they give an example. If you want to create a bar that only caters to natural humans and no Gmods or whatever, put it in there. If it's not already in one of these, if there's not already one in this, what they've already laid out already, throw it wherever you want. And if you want it to be a bar that the cops won't be coming to the rescue on, throw it in the base to Cayambe, down in the Undercity there, man. Because nobody's going to come by and help you. No police are going to come by. So you could create the concept for the bar and then take, hey, where do I want to put this? And kind of put them together and mash it up.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
Or if you're
so big.
Or if you have a hopper racer that you want the players to visit their apartment for maybe a party or maybe a private meeting, you would know that if you read this section, it's not about you can put it anywhere in the city. All they're telling you is by reading this section, you know where the best places to put it to get that flavor would be. And that would be, of course, in the Esmeraldas section of the city. Which these are all large sectors of the city. Each one of these is almost a city in and of itself. They all have a different look, a different feel, a different atmosphere. Some of them are night and day.
Yeah. I mean, you have like a Russian gulag Stalingrad city, like district, right next to, right next to what, like a freaking welcome to Miami, port town, like travel district. I mean, it's crazy. Just going just a couple blocks would do. Right. For you. And speaking of which, this place is huge. 62,000 square kilometers, it says.
Yes, it's big. Up most of the whole west coast of Ecuador.
Yep. There's 500 million official residents. Now, they also say there's probably just as many uncounted beings that are androids. So androids don't count as official residents because they don't count as human.
So all your clones and all your bioroids
don't count.
They're just furniture.
Yeah, they're just furniture, baby. That's it. People who don't hold an ID, who don't own an ID, they're too poor to have an ID. And then the off-gridders, the people who don't want to know.
Yeah. So then, one of the things I noticed early on in the setting is they don't mention skyscrapers anymore. Apparently, we've grown beyond skyscrapers. Now we're calling them star scrapers.
I know.
Which immediately evokes this vision of these ultra tall buildings that are hundreds of stories tall.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do here. You have these buildings have been built on top of other buildings, have been built on top of other buildings over the years. Yeah. They're freaking miles tall.
Yeah. And so this is, and the thing is and not only do you have different, if you're looking down on the city, right, from like a God's eye view, you have different districts. But now put that so you're looking sideways from the ocean looking at the city. You have the Undercity, which is basically at ground level. And then about 100-ish stories up, you have what's called what district is that? Damn it.
The plaza level.
The plaza level. Yep. Then the plaza level. And then above that, way up, you have the penthouses where all the risties live, and in
corporate
those corporate offices. And they mention there is a word that they've created called, I can't even, where is it? It's
arcology?
An arcologies, yes.
Now, arcologies is not actually a word they created. Arcology is really just it's a city block that is contained in and of itself. It is now a built-in structure, secured in its own way. It is...
You don't ever have to leave. It's its own city, if you will.
Exactly.
Within the city.
The way I see it is, look at it this way. You've got people who won't leave their small little town unless they absolutely have to. And I live with that every day in the Midwest of the United States, where I work with people that don't. I live an hour from where I work. I work in a small town. There are people that don't know anything about the town I live in. It's an hour away.
Yeah.
That's a very small drive in the Midwest. I commute that every day. And there are people that know nothing about the city I live in. So that's what your arcology is. Your arcology is this centralized place where people live, work, eat, sleep, and die.
Yeah.
Some of them may not ever leave. Some may leave rarely in their lifetimes. They may consider it a vacation to go to another part of the city.
Yeah.
And that's what an arcology is. It's just a block that is insular.
Yeah, so that's another concept to think about, which is unique to this setting, that kind of paints that picture here, which I wanted to mention there.
No, that's great. And so you have these humans of all different walks of life. Now, that's one thing, that New Angeles is the melting pot.
Yep.
Because of the
space elevator.
The space elevator. Everyone is immigrating here from every country in the world. So you have large populaces that will have a cultural theme. You have Nihongai district, which is Neo-Tokyo moved to New Angeles. Yeah. It is, if you are thinking of Neo-Tokyo from your Ghost in the Shell, or thinking of Neo-Tokyo from any of the hundreds of anime out there that use Neo-Tokyo,
that's what
the Nihongai district is Neo-Tokyo relocated. It has that Japanese architecture. It has that cultural influence of Japan, but anyone can live there. Then you go, down to Rabatgarad, which is so Russian, it's not even funny.
I am the machine. I love that skit, by the way.
Yeah. But yeah, these districts have taken on a cultural identity because they have so many immigrants from that culture.
Yeah.
But you could have arcologies that are strictly one culture. You can build if you have, your characters, your players walking in as a GM, you walk into one of these arcologies and suddenly, the first thing they see is a mosque. And okay, now, kind of what you're dealing with. And you see, all the women are walking around in burqas, and okay, this is a very Muslim neighborhood. And this whole arcology is built with that feel to it. And so if there's a culture in the world that you want to explore, you don't have to, as a GM, go anywhere else in the world. Just throw it in to New Angeles.
Yeah, just throw it on its own block, make it its own block in New Angeles. Look at this chapter to see if they've already got one that you like, right? But if not, throw it anywhere. It's so big, it doesn't matter.
Right. And so we get into now on page 142, we get into the second big theme in this setting. There's the three or four really big themes. There's the human movement, the keeping humans, jobs for humans, and the android disposable workforce. Now you have what makes this a dystopian setting. You have this huge dichotomy between rich and poor.
Yep.
The rich are ultra rich, the richest they'll ever, ever, ever be. And then the poor are at the bottom dregs of society, and there are billions of them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the rich, they would have, they talk about the rich having, they probably have a second home outside of the city, somewhere in the Ecuadorian countryside. They may even have, an apartment up in the beanstalk somewhere where they
commute to work in a self-driving hopper.
Yeah.
That's a flying car that drives itself. They can take a nap on the way to work. God, I wish I was these people.
That would be great. It's coming, Tony. It's coming, man.
It's coming. Yeah. But these people are called, in this setting, they're called risties, and that's just short for aristocrats. But yeah, these are the people that run the mega corporations, or they're just old money. Yeah. They're just rich for richness sake.
Yeah.
They're real estate moguls that sold all this property all around here, and their family's an old money from the area, and you can totally build a campaign about that dichotomy between rich and poor, and the people in between, those that want to be rich, that are trying to work their way into that society and running into the glass ceiling.
Right.
And so that's pretty much
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, one of the more interesting things here is, there's this shrinking middle class of people who they're corporate workers. They may take the train, the tubes to work. They may have their own hopper to take them to work, but the threat and fear of slipping into the Undercity is what keeps them driving forward. You know what I mean? Which is, I don't know, it's interesting because it's so easy, I guess, to kind of slip and fall down there, and it's very gritty in the Undercity.
And then the Undercity is what makes that dystopian future so dangerous. The Undercity is crime. The Undercity is disease. The Undercity is there are dangers that are, the rat swarms. There's dangers down in the Undercity that you don't have to deal with in the rich life, or even in the middle, middle class life. There's
the NAPD, the New Angeles PD, very, very rarely go down there.
No, it's usually self-policed by the gangs.
Right. And here's an interesting thing. So on page 143, one of the last paragraphs on the left side there, it says, when the NAPD releases statistics showing New Angeles to be one of the safest cities in the world, it's worth remembering that there's not a whole lot of crimes that get reported down in the Undercity, which is most of your population, right? So, hey, statistics, man, you can make them look like any way you want. It is a perfect example of that, right? I mean,
exactly. People don't go down there for a reason.
No. But there is an interesting. I can't remember which section I read that in, but we're talking plaza level, right? Which is 50 to 100. I don't know, depending on what district you're in. But there's that melding of like the Undercity might come. Some people might come up to the plaza level. Some of your pickpockets and your street scum or whatever could come up.
Street gangs,
and that could make for interesting adventures and conflicts and encounters.
Sure. So that pretty much covers all the way up to 143. We didn't read it all, but there's all these little nuggets in there, just little things about, like Chris read that one paragraph about the NAPD, and that sparks something in your mind as a GM. There's
I thought of a way to assassinate somebody is to hire some street thug to come up on the plaza level and just knock him off. Because there weren't any railings, man. This is like Star Wars. It looks like there weren't any railings on that freaking bridge on the cover. There's no railings on plaza level.
Yep.
What is it with FFG and not putting railings in any of their sci-fi settings? Jesus. Anyways.
Right. And then, when it's talking about the poor here, I love this section here where it talks about this. It says, most New Angelinos spend more time dreaming about moving up the social ladder than living in fear of falling down it. The majority of citizens have at least tasted the life of Aristi through the media provided by NBN. And what they're talking about here is the senses. These are no longer your senses. Yes, these are your. They don't have TV anymore. Now they have these sim senses. These are programs that you plug into that give you the feel of being that person. They're wearing a Sensi rig and they're recording their emotions. They're recording their sights, the smells, the sounds, everything that is, and it's all recorded and then hits you in this sensory overload. So you have the idea that gives me this idea of these whole groups of kids that have, have you tried the latest Miranda Rhapsody's Sensi? Oh my God. That was so, just kids that live this life of, you can see it now with kids wanting to be the celebrities that they worship.
Almost makes me think of Ready Player One in a way.
Yes. Very much.
It really does.
Yes.
And then they do have a sidebar here I want to mention on 143 called Life. Man, basically it talks about what Tony and I were talking about, like androids, bioroids, and clones, basically they're considered less than human at this time right now.
Even
right?
by the poor, they're considered less than human. Human is human. A Risty would rather shake the hands. Some of them are so anti-android. They'd rather shake the hands of a homeless poor person than touch an android.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but hey, that's one of the themes that you all can play and pull on in this setting, which is makes it unique for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
I think we give you a nice primer for the setting, folks.
Yep. And then the next section after this sample location, when you read through that, that basically just goes right into what Tony and I were saying, just its own little neighborhood, and really painted the picture for me for what this could be. So,
right, and we may just talk about that next show, just to kind of segue right into that. So
yeah, cool. And it's got my art from the cover on it.
Right on.
Cocktails and games, baby. All right, you ready to go to our favorite part of the show?
Show enough.
All right, everybody, we are back. Advantageous Threats.
Yeah.
Let's see here. You know what? I'll go first because I want us to spend a little more time on yours because you had that custom talent you want to talk about. But for me, my character, PFC James Whitefall, in a Tannhauser setting, needs to fire his bazooka into a machine gun nest as he is landing onto Sword Beach on Tuesday, June 6th, 1944. Yes, everybody, that's D-Day in Normandy. He's got enemy fire, chaos of battle, everything going around him. The machine gun nest is up a hill, behind sandbags, about a medium range away. Now, PFC Whitefall has an agility of 3 and a ranged heavy of 1. So to start with, we're going to have a yellow and 2 green versus medium range away, 2 purples. So,
okay.
Need to add some dice to this.
Oh, yeah.
I know we'll be aiming. And you know what? A boost die for aiming. And I would go so much to say he's got the right tool for the job. Because these things were made to take out fortified bunkers, machine gun nests, and tanks. So maybe another boost die?
Most assuredly.
All right.
All right, so they're behind sandbags. I see that as being
Cover.
two setback dice for that.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
And then I'm also going to throw in a setback die for the chaos of battle going on all around them.
I would be so inclined as to say he fell out of he had to jump off the side of the LCVP, the landing craft personnel vehicle. So I would say an automatic upgrade to a red.
Okay.
Work because the bazookas weren't known as being as quite as reliable as like the Panzerfaust that the Germans had, and they malfunctioned sometimes. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, there definitely would be an auto upgrade for that. And then just because of the incoming enemy fire, I will be spending a story point also as GM.
Yep. Yeah, I
because
can understand that.
A despair may be a stray bullet.
Mm-hmm. Or firing the bazooka into the ground right in front of him, or getting his buddies or something. I mean, it could be.
Could be.
And I'm gonna spend a story point because that's fucking D-Day. Mm-hmm. We're doing this on D-Day, man. Okay, so I have 2 yellow, a green, 2 blues, 2 red, 3 black. Holy crap. Now, PFC, there is a reason why he's a private first class, He doesn't quite have the knack for it yet. But after Normandy, if he survives, he'll probably get some XP from his GM, I'm hoping.
Won't be able to take the knack for it. That's non-combat skills.
Well, see, there you go. Thanks, Tony. I was testing you out on that. Of course. All right, here we go, people. Oh, and he gets that despair. Oh, crap. This is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. Okay, so he succeeds with 1 advantage and a despair.
Nice.
So I don't know what the effect of a frickin' bazooka would be, but it might not explode.
No,
but it's probably going to do a shit ton of damage to the guys up there. But there is the despair we're talking.
So, so you have the success. It does a shitload of damage. The bunker blows up. With your advantage, what do you want to do there?
With my advantage, I'm going to say that maybe it gives his group a moment, because of the explosion. It maybe gives him and his squad a moment to kind of move up onto the beach, further up to the beach.
All right. However, what the despair is going to come out as is when he hits that machine gun nest, there was several boxes of machine gun ammo in there.
Oh, shit.
And also they were stored next to several diesel cans.
Oh.
That all goes up. Oh. And the covering the covering of the machine gun nest, which was all wooden planks, just launches into the air and comes down right on top of him, pinning him.
Oh, so he's pinned on Sword Beach. Oh, fuck. That sucks. Well done.
And he is pinned in the track of an upcoming landing craft.
Oh, no.
So he's only got a turn or two to get out from under this.
Oh, no. Oops. All right, James Whitefall, PFC James Whitefall, you might not be getting that XP. But we'll see. All right, man.
All right.
Cool.
All right, so I'm bringing back an old character from one of my other Advantageous Threats. I'm bringing back Hibiscus the Green Man. In a super setting. He is a plant manipulator. He is looking for an invisible villain called the Dark Minister in an old abandoned warehouse. Now, this is such an old abandoned warehouse that it's overgrown with weeds everywhere. Okay. So Hibiscus is able to use his talent. Now, I have this natural talent, or this custom talent for him. I called it Natural Wonder. And what it allows him to do is an environment in which plants are growing. He may, and it's an active, not ranked talent, he may perform the base augment spell on himself when a plant is present as a maneuver, as if he had rolled a single success.
Okay.
So,
and is it tier 4?
It is a tier 4 talent that he took. And we called it Natural Wonder. Yep. So this allows him to boost basically he's reaching down into the plants and augmenting his senses for this role.
Gotcha, I see. So it's a free boost. Yeah, okay, I like this. This is
it's a free augment. It's a maneuver, as if he had done it with 1 success, allowing him to continue to do his action. And his action is going to be, since he's actively searching for a hidden opponent, it's actually a perception check. Now, because he normally has a 5 in cunning and 1 rank in perception, his normal roll would be 4 green, 1 yellow. Mm-hmm. However, since he's going to augment it, he still spends the 2 strain, by the way, but it's a maneuver. With that augment as a base, with a single success. So he's at 5 green dice, 1 yellow. Now, I want to mention that this is cunning is his super attribute using the supers section in the back of the core rulebook. What that allows him to do is any triumphs he rolls with that, he may add in another yellow die if he rolls a triumph.
Gotcha.
Roll in another die.
Nice.
Likewise, it's an opposed check against the villain's stealth, which the guy is called the Dark Minister for a reason. Stealth and invisibility is his thing. So he has a 5-die pool, 4 of which are red.
Nice. Now he has super agility. Now does this mean
agility?
So does this mean you're rolling the red? Now if I roll a despair, you roll another red in, right?
I'll roll another red in.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. I'm liking this.
So right now I'm looking at a huge pool here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green, 1 yellow, and 1, 2, 3, 4 red, 1 purple. That's just from their stats. Now, is it dark? Of course it's dark. How many setback dice is that?
2.
2.
For darkness is 2.
All right.
And he's invisible. That's the 4 red, right?
That is his stealth. That's just from his stealth.
Well, he's invisible though.
Right. But I'm using plant senses to try and find him.
Yeah, but does invisibility give him anything? Or is that just he's just a stealth
built
check?
into his stealth.
And you're calling it an okay, got it. Okay.
Right. So
is the under any time is he hastily looking or is he taking his time?
Oh, he's taking his time. He's reaching out for the
So
plants, trying to find the guy.
Yep, so I wouldn't add any setback die for that or make it any harder because of that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I, as a player, am going to spend a story point to upgrade for hopes of getting us one of those triumphs.
4 red and a purple? Yeah, that's a lot of red. Go ahead. I'll wait.
All right.
I could make it a 5 red. Hey, you know what? Make it 8 red. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, man. So immediately I rolled a triumph. So before I even adjudicate this roll, I'm going to go ahead and roll in.
Did you roll in
one
despair?
yellow. Hold on. I'm going to roll in one more yellow die.
Roll in a yellow one.
Okay. And I did roll a despair. So I'm going to immediately roll in another red die.
Woo!
Boom. All right. So what I've got, well, thankfully that other red die came up blank. So
not another despair?
Not another despair.
Now,
no.
If you rolled another despair, would you keep on rolling?
It chains, yes.
Oh, yeah, baby.
So, looking at canceling the threat and advantage here, getting rid of the blanks. Those are 2 more threat. Okay, so I have 2 uncanceled threat. Those were blanks. It's failure. There we go. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 successes, 2 threat, a triumph, and a despair.
Well, you find him.
I find him. With my triumph, I want to have found the base of a large tree, maybe a fallen tree, but it's still not a dead tree, but it's there. It's this huge tree that I could maybe summon later as an ally.
Okay.
So my triumph is there's this tree. Maybe it's a tree that's hidden. It's growing up between some of the walls.
Okay.
So when I reached out for the plants, I sensed this tree, and this tree kind of helped me point out to where he is because with its roots, it sensed his movement. So that's my triumph. I have now maybe an upgrade on my check to summon that tree to help me fight him.
I'm thinking so because you've tapped into the magic here. Maybe your I'm thinking maybe it just your augment just goes down, just gets shut down for some reason. Maybe the villain has something up. You know what I mean?
Is that the 2 threat?
I'm thinking that might be that. And I'm thinking, you have 2 threat or two
threat and a despair.
2 threat and a despair. No, I was thinking the despair would be that it's kind of that you're
so
that you've lost your
augment goes down.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there goes my once per encounter ability. Now, if I want to re-augment, I have to do it as an actual action.
Well, I'm thinking. Well, I can't remember if the spares. How badass can I make the spares?
You could even cut me off from being able to augment at all. Period.
See, that's what I was kind of thinking, that you wouldn't be able to augment anymore.
Okay.
Because
you could go so far with single triumph or single despair to cut me off from magic for the rest of the encounter.
Yeah, it might be that much of a
since in a supers, but in a super setting, I don't know if that because it takes away the hours.
No, I'm thinking your ability to augment.
Okay.
Is locked down because the villain has some sort of device that he's activated.
That's negating it.
That's kind of negating it in some way. Kind of how...
I know he's got some high-pitched frequency emitter that doesn't actually... I can't hear it, but it disrupts the plants.
The plants do, yeah.
So
and you know what? So I'm thinking, take it for that threat. Take a couple of strain for just having a little bit of a backlash on that. Like the plants are kind of backlashing on you.
I'm feeling it through their senses.
Something like that. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
Cool.
All right, so that's how you would use a custom talent in a super setting.
I like that talent, dude. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I kind of...
He's an advanced character. I mean, it's a tier 4, so we're talking... What did I calculate? Almost 100 experience points you would need.
I honestly think in a super setting, unless you're doing street level supers, if you're doing like your Golden Age or your Silver,
like
Silver 4-color comics, you're going to start at night level play anyway.
So night level would be what, 150?
150 earned XP.
Earned XP.
Right. Or 9,000.
9 or 10,000 in gear, whatever it is.
Yeah, if you're a gear-centric character, right. So.
Yeah, so that's 150 earned XP, which means create your character using starting XP, get them all done, get your extra XP, however that is, bump up your characteristics, then add 150 more to give you a 4-color superhero.
Damn Skippy.
Yeah, man. Cool. Dude, I like that. That's fun.
All right.
You ready to go?
You want to go home?
I'm ready to go home.
All right.
All right, folks. That is our show for tonight.
This is a good one, man. I had fun.
Yeah, that was pretty fun, man. That was pretty fun. And you know what? I'm gonna do a shout out to all the shows we have on our network. The Wild Eye, the Brewery, or is it the Brewery Show, or is it the show Brewery? No, it's the Brewery, or is it the Brewery Show? Which is it, Jamie? Anyway, the Murder Hobo Show, the 3T RPG Podcast, the Tabletop Twats, Imaginary Ramblings Podcast, Mr. Means Speaks, Thoughts of a Barbarian blog, the Role Players Imaginarium, which is ROLE.
Yep, and that's a blog.
That's a blog too. And of course, last but not least, certainly not least, Stefan Dragonspawn's The Dragon's Toolbox. So those are great shows we have on a network here and blogs. So go check them out.
Yep. I'll go back over them just a little bit. The Wild Eye Podcast, they cover Savage Worlds and all things about it.
Yep.
The Brewery Show, he's kind of done a rebranding, going back to an old format. And it used to be called the RPG Brewery, but now he's just going to be the Brewery because he wants to just talk about whatever comes to mind. We were on talking on his show with him last night. Chris and I were via the chat.
We were chatting, yeah.
He does a live Twitch show. He just announces in advance when he's going to have one, and I don't think he even has a schedule for it right now. But he's just going to talk about whatever comes to mind. For instance, I think his next episode, he said, was about Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yep.
Murder Hobo Show, that's our friend Gary McCallum. He does Savage Rifts. He does ICRPG. He does his little crafting videos that he does on YouTube. He's kind of all over the place himself. The 3T RPG Podcast, formerly known as the Tabletop Twats. The reason why they went to the 3T is just so that Facebook would quit banning them.
For twats?
For the word twats, yes. Oh at least that's what they said on their show.
Wow.
But it's probably, they do cover everything and all things about RPGs. They do a lot of fun stuff on their show. Imaginary Ramblings, it's a very short podcast by our good friend Matt Jones, and it's kind of a West Virginia, I can't remember, pop culture.
West Virginia.
West Virginia. And he covers, fiction, role-playing games, video games, whatever he feels like talking about.
Yep.
Mr. Mean Speaks is John Pollock. He does YouTube reviews of various role-playing games. Thoughts of a Barbarian, Role Player's Imaginarium, and the Dragon's Toolbox are all blogs, and they're all about all things RPG as they come to mind for those guys. So,
Yippers.
So go check them out on the Nerds International community. They're on MeWe, just like we are, each and every one of them. You can contact Chris and I. Email us at findingthenarrativepodcast@gmail.com. You can send your family and friends over to listen to us over on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, and Google Play. And you can get a hold of me on Facebook, and I will get that passed on to Chris. We are on Google Plus. However,
done this month, isn't it?
It is done later this month, and I had everything for our Google Plus on my cell phone, and I went and got a new cell phone yesterday. So don't contact us over there because I'm not loading Google Plus for less than a month.
Yeah. Don't blame me there, dude. Yeah, just find us on MeWe. Send us an invite. A request for an invite, I guess. And then we'll invite you. Make sure you're not a bot, one of those sex bots or whatever. Spamming sex bots that are over there. That's a big problem over there. A couple of the other groups I'm in, I'm like, all right. And I send an email. I send a little message to the organizers going, dudes, you need to look at who you're inviting into this.
Yeah. Peruse that profile. Yes. And if you try to get a hold of us, folks, and you're looking to join, make sure you have a little bit of about who you are on your profile, because if your profile is blank and you have a weird unidentifiable name, I probably might have said no to a couple of listeners just based on that fact, because they hadn't filled out any file information, no picture, didn't say anything about you. It's just to keep the bots off our backs. So
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's it for our show. Thanks for being here, folks. This is Tony saying keep rolling them bones.
And this is Chris saying remember the rule of cool and just have fun, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Finding the Narrative, a Genesys RPG podcast, is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned in this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of Finding the Narrative, a Genesys RPG podcast. Copyright 2019, all rights reserved.